The time has come for Lions to tell our own story. Yes, you're listening to Lion's voice. I is Ras Bat hailing from the island of St. Croix. Yeah, I'm bringing to you Rastafari vibes. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Babylon born when Rasta come together. Can you feel it? Rastafari, because Babylon done when I and I come together. Look how we live together, look how we work together, Whoa, Babylon done when Rasta come together. Hail I, Rastafari, His Majesty and Empress men and blessed. Yeah man, hail from St. Croix, Rastafari, hail you.
Aye.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari live it. Hey, the lion's voice, Rastafari.
You know, I also argue that Marcus Garvey established the first global crowdfunding platform, which is why them send him to prison. See, because while them saying him says mail fraud, no people are doing these things online. I hear you ask people to subscribe and contribute. If it's them time, the cost you're going to prison.
What do you have to tell the people about Ras Tafari?
Light to the world. The king of kings and the conquering line of the tribe of Judah. I left himself. Where's my ruler? Hey yo! Yeah. Hear them high, hear the black king on the 23rd of July. So tell them guy who praise God up in the sky, it's a lie. The Almighty living on your night. From ancient time them a try. Them Romans know them just open them suit and ties. Criminals ain't got no alibi, they stole my people. Then them come without them genocide.
Are you talking about slavery?
Them couldn't kill. The lion will come conquer Judah tribe. Go through tribulation, and I strive, see sufferation, and I still rise. That's why we tell them in America, live Rastafari in every ghetto area. We come to tell them in a Toronto, straight at it.
It's normal when I do this presentation, I start with a burning spear tune, you know, like Marcus Garvey words come to pass, because I find say the musician them capture these presentations that person I myself make in 3 minutes when we do 15 or 20 minutes to do a presentation, you know, and so we really have to give all of a credit to those ones, you know, Burning Spear them, or Virgin Fredlocks them, Black Star, them symbol Black Star Line, 7 miles of Black Star Line coming in. So this presentation was really about looking at the model that Marcus Garvey had developed in terms of sustaining his own organization, which is the UNIA. So we'll speak of a social entrepreneur. He be a social entrepreneur, which, you know, reflect the liberty of self-reliance and collective security. See? So it's important, though, to think about the context in which you operate. And you see the context is that, say, we have these set of youths who we call Gen Z, the I generation, which people actually argue say is the most entrepreneurial generation out of all. Like to work in small teams, you know, but also have a very global lens in terms of how them see everything in earth. I call them the Rastafari generation. This generation of knowing. These are the ones who born having full access to information, full access. And so them don't believe, as Rastafari say, Rastafari don't believe. These youths are some youths who know. So if you're trying to put a point to them, they're going to go to a source of information, you know, which for them now is the internet. Even the whole ideas now of what we call Millennium Development Goals, which emerged in the early part of the 2000s, those are shifted to them called the Sustainable Development Goals. And when you examine the Sustainable Development Goals, they are going to see that those foundation goals mirrors the creed of Rastafari and the ideas of Marcus Garvey as well. You know, and it is being done in that context where they call climate change resilience. So, importantly, Jamaica and the Caribbean is going to form that fourth hub where Jamaica is going to be the center of the hub. Nothing new, because that I'm from 1492. You know, when them leave out of Rome, trying to revive them own economy. And even when that went down, with the falling of Port Royal, which was the central, but one of the global central bank really, where all the wealth was deposited. So when that crashed, it put the world in next economic depression. And so that led to a real push to deal with enslavement as a way of bringing back those economies again. And Jamaica again was the center of it. You know, but you know, the emergence of the Panama Canal in the early 1900s, which also marked the entry of Marcus Garvey in a big way. You know, the Panama Canal became that point through which all the trade was taking place. And again, Jamaica was still a hub in the region. But Jamaica is expanding because of the expansion in the Panama Canal, which took place in 2016. Now, so the first ship that came to the Panama Canal was a Chinese ship, but them called the Panama ships, which carry about 9,000 containers. And again, here's the rise of South-South opportunities and the need for mainstream the most vulnerable in every development agenda that we're putting out there. So check it. If you look at that time, it is the same kind of time that Marcus Garvey lived in, because, you know, at the turn of the century, the war had ended. Just as we have wars now, but there's always a thing about wars being perpetuated. See, there was also, and with those wars ending, you have a lot of ships being available. But the economy was in problems as well. Around the same time, you have the flu, the Spanish flu, just like we have the COVID situation. Yes? And so, and just again, they were thinking about going to plunder, to continue and plunder and rape Africa, because there's just 30 years before that, or 20 years before that, they had the meetings where they plan to split up Africa, you know. Just as all them having meetings now that they don't hear about, but a couple of years from now, you'll see it written in the history books. Or they were planning to split up Africa. And you see, oh, Marcus rose, and Islas was doing work in Africa, and Marcus in the diaspora. You see with these youths rising now in Africa, Traore them rising, is the same kind of things manifesting. But now it is in a digitized age as against an analog age. And a lot of things are different, and so the information dissemination is more greater. So I argue that Marcus Garvey was not only an entrepreneur, but more what we call a social entrepreneur, so he's a mission-driven person. And so he established what's called a social enterprise cluster through the UNIA being the umbrella organization, and under the African Communities League, he established the business components, which have been the Black Star Line Shipping Company, with the Negroes Factory Corporation that we now call micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, which we argue are the engine of growth for every economy. And we are called other enterprises, which we now refer to as nano enterprises, which is a man who on the corner who have been thing where himself, but generating business. You know, I also argue that Marcus Garvey established the first global crowdfunding platform, which is why them send him to prison. See, because while them saying it's mail fraud, no people are doing these things online. I hear you ask people to subscribe and contribute. If it's them time, they cost you going to prison. See? So Marcus Garvey do these things, but now today we celebrate these things. And so I'm arguing that Marcus Garvey not only left a blueprint for entrepreneurship, but for social entrepreneurship, which is where the globe is now going to. And we adapted these things significantly in Jamaica. And I'll give you some examples of how we do these things in Jamaica, reflecting what Marcus Garvey was doing at that time. So I'm saying while the context has changed, you find that the relevance of the work is even more important today. And this is what Marcus Garvey argued. This is his words, not mine. When say action, self-reliance, self-reliance. The vision of self and the future have been the only means by which your oppressed have seen and realized the light of your own freedom. I cannot depend on a guy. You know, say, can't expect enslavers to liberate you. Don't make no sense. Just as I know, say, enslaved man can't serve free people either. You know, so without commerce and industry, our people perish economically. Black people is perishing because he has no economic system. You need your own system to combat the heartless capitalist system of the masterly ruling class, which again was white people. So note, you need black producers. Yeah, you need black producers. You need your own black factories. You need all of these things to move your economy forward. You have to have your own things in place. See? So no, they're saying that we will work with the rest of the world, but if the rest of the world don't desire to work with us, we just do our own thing. Which is why the South-South sustainable development is important. So look at these goals. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation. Now, anybody who review any of the work of Marcus Garvey knows that all those things were objectives of the UNIA, but also we still manifest in the creed of Ras Tafari. Yes? When we said the sick may, the hungry be fed, the shelters be sheltered, the sick be nourished, the aged protected, and the infant cared for. These are things that people are incorporating into all the national development programs. And then go further, but these are the foundation principles. Those 6 represent the foundation principles upon which everything else is built. But when I say Marcus was seeing that, and you see him break out into 3 key areas: economic agenda, the social imperatives, and the biodiversity imperatives. That is important within this current context. With Marcus' time would have been the environment, would be the built environment and the space in which you live, which is more than a building, but a community. And you need components of a community, which the social elements would have driven that. So these are the things that the social enterprise model captures as well. And there's no other business model that have this triple bottom line. But when in Jamaica, we push out this called the quadruple bottom line, where we think about economic, social, cultural, and environmental value creation. I speak now specifically because of the cultural footprint of Jamaica and the Caribbean. And note that the biggest footprint coming out of the Caribbean is Ras Tafari. Ras Tafari is the biggest footprint of the Caribbean, which spans the physical and the spiritual realms. People must recognize that. So the driver behind this global cultural footprint of the Caribbean, the most pronounced would have been Ras Tafari liberty, which captures all those 3 elements. So the way people think about development is different. So it's not about the amount of money you make. It's about how you're addressing their basic human needs. What are the imperatives for well-being and the creation of opportunities for persons? That's what we call the social progress index. If you look at the elements underneath it: nutrition and basic medical care, water and sanitation, shelter, personal safety. When Ras Xola speaking of food sovereignty, this is what these things really are pushing up. You cannot, it is impossible for you to address basic human needs, foundations of well-being, and provide meaningful opportunity until you address the agriculture sector, operate within the context of food, health, and wealth sovereignty. You have to do that. If all of these things are an illusion, because how are we going to sustain and finance all of these things? We already embrace these as imperatives for I and I as a people. But can I and I sustain it financially? Yes? So while we know that entrepreneurship is built upon 2 pillars of creativity and innovation, as really a process of creating value by bringing together what we call a unique set of resources to seize an opportunity. Social entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship, but it focuses on transforming what we see as problems, social, economic, environmental, and cultural problems, into opportunities. It's really just embracing the mindset that Ras Tafari vibration is always positive. I am sure you said it. There's no difference between, well, the energy can be created or destroyed. See, if you look at a thermometer, where hot start and where cold stop, it is not like that. It's about how you transform rates of vibration. So I can always see what some people consider to be a problem and recognize where there's an opportunity there, because a problem simply means that there's an unfulfilled need, which you can satisfy the good or service, which is the kind of approach that Marcus have towards his reality at the time. So note, these are businesses. Social enterprise are businesses with the primary social objective, where the surplus is used to reinvest and grow the business, and more importantly, to finance the programs that aid in the fulfilling of the mission. So when Marcus said have a Black Cross nurse, and them dealing with them providing support for persons when they have deceased in them family, providing capital for people to start businesses, providing space for people to express them creativity, what we are calling creative industries now, which is the orange economy. It has to be done through some sustainable and diversified income streams. So we can't have one business either. So when I say ganja is a driver for economics, ganja is one component in the overall economics agenda, which the main focus then is how you move up the value chain in agriculture. So you have to move to things like nutraceuticals and functional food. And that's just a fancy word for Ras Tafari and other people have been doing, We're taking all the actives out of the plants and put it into food, and people say it is functional. See? But in reality, when a Rasta man make roots, that is taking up high levels of minerals out of plants and using it as what you are called a multivitamin. You don't need a Centrum or any other kind of product like that, because the roots is a high mineral source. See, so again, they're going for all of these things. And even the things surrounding ganja, it also allows people, because when I spoke about ganja in a negative way and talk about herb, it also allows, because a lot of people not to be using herb-derived products anymore. But now there's a way awakening. We need that consciousness. Because when you can no longer enslave or shackle the king of all herb, it means everything else is also free. But it means that these are opportunities now to form enterprises around these kinds of components. So note, you have a very explicit social mission. It's not self-centered because it's about the people. How we measure success is different. So when you talk about Marcus, Marcus is extremely successful because we look at impact. It's not short run. Far eye is about having a long lens. It has to be an output to how these things affect the individual at an outcome level and how these affect the broader picture, which is what you call the impact. I have a very clear business model because it's business they're dealing with. Yes, so a very clear social and environmental mission. And check, it says, I tell liberty, you know. And if you think about Ras Tafari ethics and philosophy in terms of what we call environmental ethics, it is anchored within the era of what is called deep ecology, using what is called a Eurocentric approach, where we know that I put aeration at the center of. That is how I manifest ital divinity, you know. So it's what I'm calling a deep ecological philosophy as against a human-centered approach, where traditional religious people use them think that they have dominion over earth and so them use earth as them like. And it don't matter because the earth is going to end. You know, I always, so these terms of social enterprises and sustainable development, these are just new words, not new concepts. Rastafari liberty manifest these things, and other ancient societies manifest these things as well. But we're saying you have to have business too if you're going to make systemic changes. Yes, I must reinvest and grow those business and create this thing what we call a blended value of financial value and social value. And here we are capturing environmental and cultural value within that social value. And here I'm arguing that Marcus Garvey did this from 1919. Howell did this as well. Bob did this. The Maroons represented the same kind of thing. And if you go to every Caribbean society and hear stories of liberation, you'll find these kinds of practices taking place. See? And no, they gave my brethren from the Grameen Bank a Nobel Prize for these things. Even though it was supported by the World Bank, but nobody spoke about Marcus Garvey. Because in reality, if the world had adopted Marcus Garvey's model, I wouldn't have these problems. We would never have these problems. And this is what the model is. So know that the UNIA is at the head. And it feeds the African Communities League, takes responsibility for all these other elements, and know that as the enterprise is generated through the businesses which supports each other as well and supports African Communities League, through the African Communities League, funding is moved to the UNIA. But the UNIA again have an indirect link to all these things because the UNIA is still financing the man who's a micro enterprise, still supporting the Black Star Line, and still supporting Negroes Factory Corporation. So they call a closed loop, and it becomes self-sustained. And this is why they had to get at Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey could have philosophized as long as he want. But once you start to establish enterprises which not only challenge the mindset, but challenge the goal and agenda of the whole of Europe and America at the turn of the century, people must recognize, because Garvey was saying we must have South-South development, the Caribbean and Central and South America trading directly with Africa using ships. So note that today, Jamaica, which is a hub, have no ship. Marcus Garvey and the UNIA started around the same time as Grace Kennedy. And them fight on Marcus Garvey thing and them leave Grace Kennedy. Grace Kennedy is one of the biggest companies in Jamaica and them still don't own a ship. So you ask yourself the counterfactual, what if they didn't fight on Marcus Garvey Enterprises? Because it was deliberate. What if they didn't do that? What would it be like today? What about 4 million shareholders? 4 million shareholders? Note, some researchers argue that Garvey emphasized that individual entrepreneurial pursuits could not have done it. You have to work as group, self-reliance, collective security. Rupert Lewis also stated that none of those businesses were Marcus Garvey personal businesses. He was able to organize up to 4 million members across the world. Yes? And note, the network was across the black diaspora, United States, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa. Know that Marcus Garvey registered all his companies because formalization of the enterprise is important. So, Niggas Factory Corporation was incorporated in 1918. Remember, so the war ended in 1919. With the objective to promote African American entrepreneurship in large industrial centers by providing investment capital and technical expertise. Maybe think about the philosophy behind it, yes? So know that he sold over 200 shares at $5 per share. That's $1 million US in 1920, 1921, early 1900s. Remember that the world was going into a depression as well, and he was doing all these activities. So note, he encouraged and established through the NFC a factory that mass-produced the first African-American dolls. In Garvey's plan, each individual business will be cooperatively owned by UNI members and eventually link into a worldwide network. So you have grocery stores, restaurants, steam laundry, millinery stores, tailors, dressmakers, shops, and publishing businesses. And there are many other businesses. So Garvey, as the ancient mentioned, was actually a government in a government. Yes? His vision was comprehensive. So it included social, cultural, and political. And economic activities were used to carry out welfare programs and finance media for the dissemination of the social, political, and socio-cultural philosophy erected in the philosophy of one God, one aim, and one destiny. So even today, Quasi, what you're doing, you reflects the work of Marcus Garvey through the media component, spreading our own information. So note, they argue that these companies, these businesses provided loans to persons and an employment bureau to aid members seeking employment. These are not simple things Marcus Garvey was doing. So note, it was a community service agency, paying debt and other minor benefits to its members. So I'm saying the model exists. So the stock paper here, today in Jamaica, we establish what's called a social stock exchange. There are some things that come out of the work that we do as a team. As a matter of fact, all of us who are part of the center that I direct were members of the Marcus Garvey movement. And so we are here doing this work for a while with a lot of people recognizing that Marcus Garvey established that when I remind me of black print as to how I am supposed to set these things, and the state of Jamaica has done the same thing now in terms of establishing a social stock exchange to support enterprises with the same kind of objectives, similar to what Marcus Garvey was doing 100 years ago. So note that, as I said before, Marcus did some mighty works, but as always, he threatened the system and there were persistent and martial attacks against Marcus Garvey. There were many anti-Black Star Line persons out there, and they were producing materials anti what Marcus Garvey was doing. Laws were passed to stop when they are stockholders, especially those in Dominica and the Belgian Congo, stockholders of the Black Star Line shipping company. They say he had craft and thievery and sabotage of many of his employees. And the absence of certain skill set. You have white engineers now who are doing the work, destroying the ships. So in a different paper that we wrote, we mentioned some of these things as to why there were challenges with Marcus Garvey businesses, especially with the scale of operations without the amount of skill set. But today, we have all the skill sets we need amongst INS as a people to manifest a lot of these things that are being done. Yes? So note that Martin said, without these kind of problems, there's no reason why the UNIA shipping venture would not have been at least modestly profitable. And in speaking modestly. So the United States quasi provided Garvey with the kind of large black population base, the financial and technological resources, and the strategic location at the center of the world and Pan-African affairs that were the objective conditions against which he could rise to world prominence. And his appearance in the US, however, coincided with the savage official repressions against racial organization. And bear in mind that subsequent to that, to the rise of Garvey, they destroyed the Black Wall Street in Tulsa. And the persons recognized the influence of what Garvey was doing in terms of helping to influence the rise of those businesses against in the black walls. And it's America bombed them own people. Because then once you start to talk about business, it becomes a challenge, not just in America, but across the entire globe. It challenges the status quo when those who are underserved start to generate wealth. So, soon close. So in concluding, this is what I'm arguing, that Garvey work is not just extremely relevant today, but it's the most relevant work amongst I and I who are looking at entrepreneurship. I look at how I slice idea with governance, seeing, and national development. And we say, okay, how we move the enterprise? When you read the work of I.S. Lassie, it's the same thing about this cooperative enterprise. But as a model where I have in front of I, Marcus Garvey, UNIA, provides a very useful model, the methodology, seeing, formalizing the enterprise. But again, there are many lessons to learn, because note, you must have adequate resources to operationalize the venture in a meaningful way. You know? And so you can't scale a venture too rapidly if you don't have those resources to support the scaling of the venture. But again, it's the impact. So not because those ventures are not here today in terms of the day-to-day operations, but the lessons that you learn, the models that are there, are most relevant. Especially when you think about that at national and global scale now, because again, it is reflected in the SDGs. So importantly, learn to appreciate your own people brain. That's why your program is crucial, Quasi, because you bring on people in the program where we are sharing, it's a learning platform, we are sharing, we are learning so much from each other. See? And we are talking about things in the business, we are talking about things in the social, we are talking about things in the environment, we are talking about things in the cultural. So we are talking about all the elements that are important within the assessment framework. We don't need to reinvent our wheel. Again, though, it reinforces the importance of what we call the micro, small, and medium enterprise as social enterprises to ensure that your engine of growth is in the hands of the people, so it endogenizes growth. But important, we forgive what we never forget, you know? And those principles of self-reliance and collective security is crucial for every kind of development, but in particular, South-South sustainable development. See? So, in reality, you know, as enough of the ones them chant that Marcus Garvey says, enough of the people are not going to know themselves until their back is against the wall. And if you check it, it's not just I people, but the globe find themselves in a situation where through them own greed, them back is against the wall. And within this context, you find that the people whose back was against the wall most of the time, one were using creative and innovativeness to set a system which is sustainable. These are the people I'm going to run to. So again, you have to find people running to Rastafari to speak about things and in their own ways. And just as how you see it, you'll find that Marcus Garvey works, whether they want to say it or not, is going to be the model, and is the model that is being embraced globally if we are going to, and in an attempt to address most of these problems that the globe faces. So give thanks.
Poor man working for the rich man. Rich man don't care about the poor. But look along the rich man own the poor man land. The poor say him can't take it no more. But look along the poor man working for the rich man. Rich man don't care about the poor. But look along the rich man own the poor man land. The poor say so him can't take it no more. One day he started chanting, give me some land, want get some land, wanna build my own house, be my own man then. Give me some land, want get some land, I wanna raise some little baby with a pretty black woman. Dirty Babylon, them want to stop the movement, stop the family, them bring down unemployment. Them want the black woman become a single parent. No daddy can about if Babylon not pay your rent. Without the Vatican servants start the enslavement. Buckingham get rich off of the slave shipment. Uncle Sam no want no reparation argument. Them just provide opportunities for prison sentence. Who profits from a whole community's imprisonment? Me so big man up a top account him dollars and cents.